This week, we focus in on all of the news from a smaller but still impactful VMware Explore. We're also talking about the cease of the publication of AnandTech after 27 years, the rumors that Intel might actually be changing course on this Pat Gelsinger strategy, the cloud providers that are consuming all of the GPUs and what that means for companies like Dell and NVIDIA, Hammerspace putting their software on hardware, AMD taking on NVIDIA thanks to the ML Commons results, and finally California proposing an AI kill switch. And what does that mean? All this and more on this episode of the Gestalt IT Rundown. Welcome to the Gestalt IT Rundown, where each time we meet, we run down the IT news of the week with a variable degree of snarkiness. I'm your host, Stephen Foskett, and I'm joined this week by a special co-host, Mr. Alistair Cook, since Tom Hollingsworth is out of the office this week. Alistair, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here on the show for the first time.
I got a question for you. You are located in the land of Kiwis. Do you guys have newspaper carriers, and do they want $2?
We definitely have newspaper carriers. Newspaper delivery is still a thing here, and it's a declining thing as it is everywhere. The print media has shifted to online, so getting your pocket money is hard in it these days for young people.
Well, it is National Newspaper Carrier Day, and remember, that's another one of those professions that you're supposed to tip. I guess even if you don't subscribe, go ahead and give them a tip. Now let's take a look at some of the news of the week. After 27 years of setting the standard for online tech journalism, AnandTech has published its last article. The popular tech news site, which was revered by industry insiders and tech enthusiasts like us, was known for impartiality, depth, and never sensationalizing the news. Although some were worried when founder and namesake Anand Lalshimpi left for Apple, the site just continued to deliver excellent news coverage for decades. But it appears that the current owner, Future LLC, which I should note has no relation to Gestalt IT's owner, Futurum, will cease publishing new articles on the site. Thankfully, they're keeping existing articles online as well as the forums, and they also own Tom's Hardware, which will continue to publish. Alistair, I'm sure that you're an avid AnandTech reader. What do you think?
Well, I'm glad Tom's Hardware is staying because I read that one as well. AnandTech reflects the change in what we're seeing in publication, that getting good quality journalism is expensive and people aren't typically paying so well for it, and the advertising is harder to get. This is what we'll continue to see, is it's difficult to get that independent journalist and analyst perspective. But the rumor mill is going wild that Intel's financial troubles are about to knock the chip maker off of Pat Gelsinger's intended course. We've heard that the next generation chip fabrication isn't going well, leading to an executive's departure. Others say Intel is looking to spin off the fab business altogether, or perhaps to sell the Altera FPGA business. All of this will be a significant departure from the plans set in motion by Pat Gelsinger. What should we make of these rumors, Stephen?
Well, whenever we hear rumors about company moves, we should take them with a grain of salt, I'm sure. Honestly, we have been very much vocal proponents of Pat Gelsinger's plan for what he's done or what he intends to do to turn around Intel. But of course, we've covered repeatedly the challenges that Intel has faced in actually executing this plan. And, of course, as we've mentioned many times, there are a lot of unknowns here. Chiefly, there's technical unknowns in terms of whether Intel can actually deliver on their aggressive move to implement a fab business and get back competitive and even pull ahead of TSMC in next-generation fabrication. We've also watched as Intel has shed various product lines over the years. And now there's rumors swirling again. I was pretty concerned about this when Intel had a big stock drop recently, that Wall Street would start pushing to either get rid of Pat Gelsinger's plans for the turnaround or get rid of Pat himself. And unfortunately, that's exactly the kind of rumors that we're hearing. Although I haven't heard of anyone saying yet that Pat may be on the way out, these rumors are not really good news for the big chip maker. The idea that some insiders may be losing their faith in the ability of the company to execute on its next generation fab plans, the fact that Intel, which has already shed many different divisions, is looking to shed another one, a big one, Altera, the FPGA group. Well, these don't bode well for the chip maker, and it's one of those things that's causing a lot of concern. If it was up to me, I honestly would see that perhaps Altera doesn't need to be part of Intel, and maybe somebody like Marvell could pick it up. That would be a great choice. But I would be really, really concerned if we saw a split of Intel's design and fab businesses, because that's sort of the whole point of Pat Gelsinger's turnaround plan. I would also be very, very concerned if we saw any kind of move to oust Mr. Gelsinger himself and replace him with, let's say, a bean counter from a private equity company or something like that, because essentially then it would be game over. So I really hope that these rumors aren't true. I really hope that Intel is on track to deliver next generation products and fabricate competitive parts and really rocket ahead in the industry. But unfortunately, this is a big money game with a big money company, and there's a decent chance that these rumors might be true and that we might be seeing the end of big ol' Intel. While Dell, like other server vendors, has experienced a huge growth in dedicated AI server sales, there's a scarcity of NVIDIA GPUs that's making delivering these servers harder. We've talked about this a little bit on the rundown and the shifting trends toward different vendors providing some of these AI supercomputers. NVIDIA GPUs are being gobbled up by these hyperscalers before they reach Dell and other OEMs. It may still be some time before we see the racks full of Dell PowerEdge servers with Blackwell GPUs that Michael Dell talked about at Dell Tech World this year. Alistair, what's happening out there with the cloud providers and GPUs?
Well, I think Jensen Huang at NVIDIA is still smiling all the way, because every cloud provider wants to deliver a managed service for AI learning and inference. We know that most of the foundational models are trained on public cloud resources because you need a vast amount of resources for a relatively brief period of time, and it really suits borrowing those from a cloud provider, renting those from a cloud provider. And so there's a huge appetite amongst the hyperscalers to build out these massive farms of GPUs. And typically NVIDIA GPUs, the H100s and the H200s being the sort of hardware that goes out into these farms and builds these massive models. There's also a huge cost around the network build out, and we'll see more of that kind of story around network build out for AI inference as we come through into AI Field Day next week. And so this huge demand for GPUs makes it very easy for NVIDIA to simply send off huge numbers of GPUs to hyperscalers. It makes it much more difficult then for OEM vendors, every other server vendor that's selling to the enterprise organizations that want to get on board the AI and particularly the generative AI bandwagon, to get hold of these GPUs to fill up their servers. So whilst Dell, for example, has had a tripling of the value of sales they've made for AI-optimized GPU servers, these massive PowerEdge servers that'll hold a bunch of GPUs, they're having trouble fulfilling them. Their backlog of unfulfilled sales is nearly 3 months long because they simply can't get the GPUs. And this will be the same across all of the other hardware vendors that are selling into enterprise customers. So there is a significant issue for those enterprise customers getting hold of that hardware in order to be able to be innovative and getting the business advantage of generative AI. This probably is forcing some of them to use cloud services for their generative AI and feeding back into that demand from the cloud services to buy more GPUs, and again starving the OEMs from access to these GPUs. I think we'll see a little later on AMD coming to the party and Intel being here with GPUs that are competitive is going to be really helpful for easing that pressure. Hammerspace produces a respected data virtualization platform. enabling applications like AI training to access data anywhere. One of the strengths of Hammerspace is that it is a pure software. It can run just about anywhere on just about anything. But now the company is announcing a partnership with reseller Arrow to ship a storage virtualization appliance, a physical appliance based on Dell hardware. Is it 2004 all over again? Or is something else going on here?
Well, I have to say that when our colleague Mitch Lewis mentioned this, I was kind of chuckling because my background in the storage industry, well, I lived through the storage virtualization wars. We saw many of those companies and products come and go. In fact, many of those presented at the early Tech Field Day events in the years that began 2.0.0 and 2.0.1. But here we are in 2024, and we're seeing storage virtualization appliances gaining a foothold yet again. Well, the truth is that's not what's going on here. Hammerspace has always allowed you to run their global data platform software on a variety of different servers and platforms, and many implementations make sense to run on a dedicated server. In fact, many of their customers are already running Hammerspace on dedicated servers. And this move is quite simply a way to codify that, sort of like NVIDIA does with their GPU clusters or other software makers do with resellers and integrators and standard platforms. That's exactly what's going on here. Essentially, Arrow has a bunch of customers who want to deploy a bunch of Hammerspace, and they want to do it in a standardized way on appliances, and Hammerspace said, sure, well, go ahead and do it. Now, it's important that we call attention to this because one of the key features of Hammerspace, and this was actually the difference between Hammerspace and their predecessor company, was that Hammerspace is not a storage platform. It does not have a storage array. It does not require a specific storage array. And so it was very important to them that they separated the data from the storage when it came to deploying this platform. And that's exactly what they're doing here. They're still separating the data from the storage. They're just delivering it in a slightly different way. The latest ML Commons results have just come out, and they make sure, let me try that again. The latest ML Commons results just came out, and they sure make AMD look great. We've long speculated that AMD's Instinct series is competitive with NVIDIA's best AI processing GPUs, and now there's data that says exactly that. But NVIDIA still has an incredible market share lead over the competition, including AMD. Given this level of competitive strength, why isn't AMD making more of a dent in NVIDIA's market?
I think that dent is about to start to happen. It's results like these that give customers confidence to look at something other than NVIDIA. What we've seen is so much hype over the last year and a half around NVIDIA and generative AI has meant that it's a bit like buying IBM used to be. You never get fired for buying NVIDIA. And businesses are making big commitments to the actual platforms that they're choosing to buy here. These are huge pieces of infrastructure that are being bought, and so risk aversion is natural. AMD now showing some benchmark results that show better price performance and at least competitive performance, the same, basically an interchangeable kind of performance in these benchmarked workloads, particularly around inference. And that's what the ML Commons benchmarks here showed, particularly for AMD, was that around inference, which is the majority of the workload that businesses will run, the AMD accelerators are at least as good as the NVIDIA accelerators, and this is where we'll see much more confidence to deploy these into production use cases, rather than just going with what everybody else has been going with. As mentioned earlier, it's been harder and harder to get hold of the NVIDIA GPUs, and so this is a huge opportunity for AMD to get a lot of product out in front of customers who now have confidence that that product is going to do what they need, that they're not taking a huge risk on an unknown piece of technology. This is why we love ML Commons and the use of MLPerf benchmarking, to give us an indication that it is sensible to use an alternative technology. This also may be where we see Intel actually come out of the doldrums of its AI strategy and its GPU strategy, and with the release of Gaudi 3, we may well see a huge increase in sales there. But AMD definitely has an opportunity to make a big stamp on the market in front of particularly the enterprise buyers who have been frustrated with their inability to get NVIDIA GPUs fast enough, and now they have a credible option, a reliable option that can deliver them what they need. The state of California is awfully worried about AI. The state legislature has overwhelmingly passed a bill that requires a so-called kill switch to all AI systems in case they get out of hand. Now it's on Governor Gavin Newsom, who is under pressure to veto the bill. But even if he does, there appears to be support in the state legislature to override his veto and make it a law. Does the government know something about AI that we don't?
Well, I think that this reflects the fact that a lot of people are awful worried about AI. And I think it's really interesting that this is happening in California, where most of the AI development is occurring. It's really an interesting story, isn't it? That this overwhelming majority, and we say overwhelming majority, we're talking a 32-1 vote in the state Senate and a 45-11 vote in the state assembly, which essentially gives them, as mentioned, the ability to override a veto if all of those legislators decided that they wanted to do such a thing, and if Newsom decided to veto it. The kill switch would essentially be a way to turn off AI if it starts introducing, quote, novel threats to public safety and security, or if it's acting with, quote, limited human oversight, intervention, or supervision. Now, I can see why this would happen or occur to someone that's something that we need, since, you know, we've all seen The Terminator. We've all seen various movies where AI takes, well, a strange turn. In fact, I think there's a new movie coming out pretty soon here that looks an awful lot like something this legislative move would be intended to stop. But that being said, I think the entire concept of the risk of an AI-driven extinction is based more on a misunderstanding of the capabilities of large language models than on their actual capabilities. Unfortunately, it's also based on the ability of humans to put machines in place that aren't ready for tasks. And I think that there's a pretty good chance that we're going to see people taking machine learning models that appear to be intelligent but aren't, and applying them in places that they need to be intelligent and still aren't. And so in that case, maybe what we need is a kill switch on idiotic business decisions instead of a kill switch on AI itself. But it's going to be interesting to watch what happens here. And as always, it's interesting to note that this is happening in the land of Hollywood movies and AI software development. Now let's take a closer look at a big little event that happened last week. It was VMware Explore time, and unfortunately I wasn't there. I think neither were you. It's one of those things which is a little bit sad because we've been going to VMware Explore for many years and VMworld before that, and we watched as VMware's position in the market has changed intentionally. And I think that's pretty much what we saw at VMware Explore. I have to say that I'm not one of those people who's going out there and crying crocodile tears over the changes that are happening to VMware because, frankly, it's a business and that's what businesses do. And I'm sorry to have to say it that way, but that's how it is. The community, the people, well, that's not a business and we miss each other, but we actually still get to hang out together and see each other at other events. And I think that the community will survive regardless of what VMware ends up doing as a company. But that being said, I think that it is really sad to think that this is sort of the end of an era when it comes to VMware and VMworld being the center of the IT universe, considering that it went from a conference that would have literally over 20,000 people to estimates say about 5,000 this year. We also, of course, have seen a radical shrinkage in the number of products and the variety of products coming out of VMware. And again, that's a very explicit business decision by Broadcom to focus the company on its most profitable and important businesses. So let's talk a little bit about those products, unless actually, Alistair, you want to jump in with any reflections on your own experience with VMworld.
Well, yeah, like you, VMworld has been the gathering of the clan for me, and in fact, it was my very first VMworld, um, coming straight from the airport, that I met you, and followed along with you to start getting introduced to the wider community at VMware that particular day, and it is a little sad that after all of these years, since 2011, I've been involved in almost every VMworld event and attended almost all of the in-person ones since then. And I was not at VMworld this year, VMworld Explore as I like to call it, and primarily because the vBrown Bag Tech Talks couldn't attract sponsorship. The change of focus that Broadcom has made to say that the conference is about, and the company is about, those largest, most significant customers who are making the most use, and particularly what we've seen is they're very focused on VMware Cloud Foundation as being the entry point. So the customers that Broadcom cares about are the ones that get value out of VMware Cloud Foundation, that like that whole integrated suite of pieces. And we've already covered on the rundown previously the release, or the upcoming release, of VMware Cloud Foundation 9 with all of the new goodness, and that still hasn't shipped. We're still waiting for it. But some other things were also announced at VMware Explore this year. What we noticed as a community was a lack of VMware branding on a lot of things. Many of these things were straight up branded Broadcom. So Broadcom announced Tanzu Platform 10. Like all development platforms and platforms at all, more generative AI is built into Tanzu Platform version 10, both from the perspective of building generative AI applications. VMware, like many providers, has recognized that building generative AI applications is a very difficult activity, and that the more they can provide tooling to simplify that process, build the expertise in generative AI into the tool, so you can actually build your business application using generative AI. This is one of the two big things that I saw coming into the Tanzu Platform 10. The other one was more of the sort of governance, the enterprise scale governance for building these applications with great agility. We know that cloud native development and DevOps practices are often at conflict with the sort of slow governance and control processes that enterprises require. And managing that sort of disparity is an important part of having a good tool set and enabling agility without losing that. One of the things that also we saw in the Tanzu platform is support for VMware Private AI, the foundation with NVIDIA product. That collection is again coming into Tanzu platform, so we're not just building applications that are calling external AI services, but can use AI within our own. The other AI-related thing I noticed in there was around the Edge AI, and this is a combination of VeloCloud supporting more transient low-bandwidth links like fixed wireless and satellite network links. And I've always liked VeloCloud as a software-defined network security platform. The other thing we saw in the Edge AI was some improvements to the Edge Orchestrator platform for delivering applications out into those edge locations, because the connectivity is important, but ultimately we're delivering applications and we're delivering data out into these edge locations. There were a few other announcements, more of the products that I'm less personally interested in, some more Broadcom products being brought into the broader suite of what VMware customers might have used in the past. But we definitely see this focus on the smaller number of customers who are very committed to the VMware Cloud Foundation platform, and helping them to get more value out of it by getting them committed to more Broadcom products. The other element that we saw at the conference, or we saw reported from the conference since neither of us were there, was less presence of partners. So Broadcom has this huge suite of capabilities themselves, and there seems to be less incentive for partner organizations to come along. Now, this also applies because these large organizations that Broadcom are focused on are also the focus for a lot of the OEM partners, and they'll have direct relationships with the large customers. Because VMware Explore is no longer that meeting of all of the tribes of all of the smaller customers, there's less value for the OEMs like IBM and Cisco to be at the conference, because they already have relationships with those same customers. So we definitely have seen that big change in what the VMware Explore, or as we'll probably see it in the future, Broadcom Explore conference is. And it really does map to what Broadcom said they were doing from the beginning. I think, like you, Stephen, I've seen wailing and gnashing of teeth of people who are upset by the fact that Broadcom has done exactly what Broadcom said it would do. Like you, I understand that this is a business, it's not all a hobby. There are all kinds of other places that communities can gather, and subsets of that community has formed around Tech Field Day and the events that we run with Tech Field Day.
Well, thanks a lot for that perspective, Alistair. I have to say, I agree with much of what you said. And also, I would say that it is important to keep in mind that, as VMware has shifted and focused on certain customers, that opens up the door to other companies and other exciting new products that can fill in those gaps. Everywhere that VMware once had a product offering, well, that's another place for another half a dozen startups to jump in. And everywhere that VMware once had a product manager and software developers and customer support and everything, well, those people are maybe destined to find themselves in a young, exciting startup doing something else fun and interesting. So, things do change, and it's sad to see them change, but frankly, Broadcom is opening as many doors as they're closing by moving out of various areas. When it comes to some of these announcements, though, I do want to call attention to a few of them. Like you said, we heard at AI Field Day last time about the ability to run Edge AI applications and data center AI applications on VMware. And VMware is very strongly positioning themselves as sort of a universal platform for running AI applications. And that's we're seeing more of that in both Cloud Foundation and Tanzu Platform 10. And it would be a poor choice if I didn't mention that we are going to see VMware at AI Field Day, which is coming up here next week. And I'm sure that we'll hear a lot more about this at that event. We're also going to see VMware at Edge Field Day, and that is likely to see some of this software-defined Edge with VeloCloud, the Edge Orchestrator platform, that sort of thing. So there is still a lot of really interesting things happening at VMware. There are a lot of new developments coming out of Broadcom. And yes, it's not the same company that it was, and it's not the same world that it was when that company has changed. But the community is still here, the people are still here, and I actually look forward to some more new and exciting developments coming out of VMware and out of the former VMware folks in the coming years. So keep an eye on it. It's change, and change is always hard, but change is sometimes exciting. Before we go, let's take a look at what's happening on the weeks ahead. I did mention AI Field Day is coming up September 11th through 13th. We've got companies including VMware, along with companies like Elastic, Integral, Arista, Cisco, Keysight, coming to present to us at AI Field Day. And if you haven't listened in yet, you probably ought to give a listen to the Tech Field Day podcast the last couple of weeks, where we talked about how AI is a fad and AI is not a fad. So those two episodes are a lot of fun. We've also got Edge Field Day coming up here, September 18th and 19th, and that one is going to be a great event as well. We're very excited to have companies like Avasa, OnLogic, T-Second, Zedata, and yes, VMware coming back at Edge Field Day, which is September 18th and 19th. Then we're going to have an exclusive networking field day with Nokia on September 24th. We've got an AI data infrastructure field day coming up in October, and a lot more product or field day events happening after that. So keep an eye out for those. Thanks very much for watching this episode of the Gestalt IT Rundown. You can catch new episodes every Wednesday as a YouTube video or in your favorite podcast application. The Rundown is streamed live on TechStrong TV as well, and you can often catch us on other TechStrong and Futurum Group programs. We'll be back next Wednesday to talk about all of the IT news from the week that was. But until then, for myself, for Alistair, for Tom Hollingsworth, and the rest of us here in the Gestalt IT crew, here's wishing you and yours and your newspaper carrier a great day.